Okay. So in this cartoon, the farmer is saying, your dog is worrying my sheep. But the dog, of course, is saying, there's global warming, acid rain, floods, droughts, overpopulation. We have this a lot, and especially in the media, where media are really worried about worrying people, about not selling their papers, about losing their subscribers. And this is a big part of the problem with where we are with climate change. Governments have responded as well by doing very little. And we have this raging fire, literally and figuratively, which is being fueled by our dependence on fossil fuels. Caroline Hickman, who is a climate psychotherapist at Bath, University of Bath, conducted this study of 10,000 people around 10 countries around the world. And it was published recently, although it's a preprint at the moment. But the UN, the WHO, even the Stephen Colbert Show featured the survey findings because they're so important. So out of the 10,000 people, what percentage do you think felt that the future is frightening? Bearing in mind these are people aged 16 to 25, which I assume all of you, or nearly all of you, are in. Well, it's around 75%, 3/4 of those 10,000 people felt that the future was frightening. What about humanity is doomed? Let's do a quick survey in here. If you think that humanity is doomed, put up your hand. On what time frame doesn't matter, really. I mean, let's say within the next 1,000 years. I'm going to guess maybe 30% here, but maybe a little more. Depends on how brave you are at putting up your hand, really. But in this survey, 56% felt that humanity was doomed. I have less opportunity than my parents. What about that one? Quick survey here. Who here feels that have less opportunity than their parents? But bear in mind, we are at Imperial College doing a master's degree, so maybe it's a little different here. But with these 10 countries, just over half felt that they had less opportunity. I'm hesitant to have children. We won't do a survey here, but 39% were hesitant to have children. The government is protecting me. Just a third. Some quick questions. I'd like you to raise your hand if you have already personally been affected by climate change. Okay, so we've got 3-4 people here. It's interesting. How about this one? Has your life already been affected by destruction of the natural world? Put up your hand if you think that's true in your case. Everyone should have their hand up. Why? Why is everyone wearing a mask in this room? Now, scale here, how worried are you about these two issues? Again, put your hand up if you feel that you're at this end of the scale, not too worried, not too scared. How about kind of in the middle? Most of you. How many people are so worried and scared that it's all I can think about? Yeah, I would expect some people to be raising their hands at that point. Now, in brutal honesty, this has never, ever happened before. We can see on the y-axis here the temperature anomalies in degrees centigrade. Going back 20,000 years, Ice Age, pretty cold, gets a bit warmer, Holocene, very stable. About 10,000 years ago when human civilization started, 100 years, bang, 1.2 degrees so far. Now, why do you think that the Holocene, or this stable period of climate, coincides directly with human civilization. For 1 minute, have a chat with the person next to you about why you think human civilization and that period of stability happened at exactly the same time. When we're talking about stability coinciding with human civilization, did anyone come up with anything, any reasons for why they think that might be the case? Oh, okay, that's a nice idea. So maybe humanity and farming made it stable. Okay, so it's a kind of a cycle of to and fro, kind of symbiosis thing. Yeah. Any other ideas? Yeah? Yeah, precisely. Yeah. If you're a farmer or you want to start your farm and you set up a place, but then suddenly you have this temperature anomaly, it gets warmer quickly or colder quickly, you can't stay there. You've got to keep moving around. So human civilization really was only able to start when the temperature around the world, the mean temperature, stayed very constant, because then you could predict weather, you could predict seasons, and you could grow stuff, meaning that you could have a city, you could feed 1,000 people rather than 15 people. So because of that stability of the climate, we were able to become the world's dominant species, probably someone from Teams there. Only in that last little bit have we thrown things out of control, but we don't know how humanity is going to deal with that. When we look back a bit further, this is going now 800,000 years, Homo sapiens are only about 2/3 of the way across. You can see that the stability here with CO2 concentration this time is kind of stable, goes up and down from 250 to 200, and then where are we now? 420. That's completely unprecedented. This has never, ever happened before. Okay, so there's a lot in the news about 1.5 degrees. But then there are some people saying, what about 2 degrees? And the Paris Agreement was about keeping temperatures well below 2 degrees. Well below meaning 1.5 degrees. Okay, so there are still lots of people campaigning, rightfully so, about 1.5 degrees rather than 2 degrees. But what's the big difference? I mean, it's only half a degree, right? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes this time to talk to the person next to you about why it has to be 1.5 degrees and not 2. Two things. Has anyone got any ideas? Doesn't matter if you're wrong, just any ideas why you think that 2 degrees might be too much?
Reversibility, so to get to 2 degrees is a lot more difficult or even close to impossible to actually reverse the effect. Okay,
so this is about reversibility. If you can get to 2 degrees, maybe you can't reverse it back to 1.5. Yeah? Any other comments?
Maybe the melting of ice caps.
Yeah, melting of ice caps, you can't refreeze them very easily. Yeah, nice one. Yeah. Yeah, massive one. Ecosystems can go out of balance, but then how do you get them back again? When things go extinct, they're gone. Yeah, okay, there's some really good ideas there. Let's see what I've got. Okay, at 1.5 degrees, this might be a bit difficult for you to see at the back, but I'll read it out. So extreme heat every 5 years, 14% of the world will get at 1.5 degrees. Rising sea levels around 26 to 77 centimeters by 2100. Insect decline, 6% lose half the range. Plant decline, 8% lose half the range. The vertebrate decline, 4% lose half the range. The Arctic sea ice, which we heard as well, ice-free every 100 years during the summer. How about corals? At 1.5 degrees, we're expecting 70 to 90% of them will die. And fisheries will expect to lose 1.5 million tons. And crops, about 3% lost. Now, how does that compare with the 2 degrees? Well, it goes from 14% to 37% with extreme heat every 5 years. Rising sea levels goes up to 87 centimetres as an upper bound. Doesn't seem like a big deal at the moment. With insects, they go from 6% to 18%, 3 times more. Plant decline doubles. Vertebrate decline doubles. Arctic sea ice will be ice-free every 10 years rather than every 100 years. Extremes in the poles. The corals will lose over 99% of the corals will die at 2 degrees. With fisheries, it doubles the amount that fish are available. And crops more than double. Okay, so what are the effects of the greenhouse gases? I overheard some people talk about types of greenhouse gases, and that's absolutely crucial because it's not just carbon dioxide, it's also methane, water vapor, F gases, nitrous oxides. And in this quote, which is from the IPCC this year, in 2019, atmospheric CO2 concentrations were higher than at any time in the last 2 million years, with high confidence. And concentrations of methane and nitrous oxide were higher than any time in the last 800,000 years. How did they know that? They looked at ice cores. Ice cores are disappearing very, very quickly, so we have to get this data very, very quickly before those ice cores disappear. Heat waves. Yeah, let's look at that. Heat waves. Yeah. Oh, wildlife extinction. Yeah. So we've got here ecosystem collapse. Yeah. One on the back again. Yeah. So releasing methane isn't really the kind of effect I'm talking about. Yeah. Famines, yeah. So famines, I've written food shortages. Yeah. Mass displacement, I've written mass migrations, yeah. Lovely. Flooding. Yeah, I did say that, but yep, you're right. Here's one of them. Declining health, okay. That is one, and it comes in, I've written it as something slightly related. Anyone think of something? Pandemics, yeah. Okay. Right, we've got 3 minutes to go. We've got to get some more. Landslides, okay, now landslides are a thing, and yeah, but they do come about, but I haven't got them down. One at the back. Hurricanes, yeah, I have written tropical cyclones.
Rising sea levels.
Rising sea levels, yeah, sea level rise, that is correct.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbreathable air.
Yeah, unbreathable air. Air pollution, I don't have. My PhD's in air quality. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's from what we said, by 2090, about 2 billion people will be breathing in air that's above the safe level by the WHO.
Yeah, and the WHO limit has gone down significantly in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. And 10,000 people already die every day from air pollution anyway.
Yeah, it's around 7 million a year.
Yeah.
Any others? Yeah, resources. Yeah, with resources, I put food shortages, but I guess other resources as well. Yeah. But I don't have it on my list. Any others? Earthquakes. Would they be more common? Maybe. Under an ice sheet that's melting and less stress on the rock could create earthquakes which displace the ice which goes into the ocean, causes tsunamis.
So yeah. Melting ice caps.
Yeah, that is related to sea level rise I've got here. Any others? Droughts. Yeah, droughts. Lovely. Yeah, we're getting through them. Yeah, extreme weather. Yeah, extreme cold snaps they're called. Yeah, that's right. What about money? Is that going to be affected? Inequality, yeah. Say again?
Inflation? If you get inflation, I don't know. If suddenly there's a shortage of resources and suddenly all the prices for everything goes up.
Yeah, but it's more extreme than that. Yeah, financial collapse. Yeah, we're talking collapse, not just like a little crash. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, is there also a collapse in just the energy supply we'll have, because we're going to need more energy?
Yeah, I wrap that up into government collapse, I guess. But I think this was mentioned. Water shortages, I think, were mentioned. Ocean deoxygenation, societal collapse, in other words, wars, which we kind of touched on, and ocean acidification. I think we did really well there. We got, how many did we get? 11 out of 16. That's brilliant. All right, let's keep going. So, general effects. We talked about fires. Billions of animals died in the wildfires in Australia. Air pollution was mentioned, but from wildfires is a really big issue. Homes get destroyed, as we have seen in California and Canada. We mentioned droughts. 3.7 billion people in extreme drought at 2 degrees. Mass migration, wars over resources, heat waves. Yeah, 70,000 people died of extreme heat in Europe in 2003. Ecosystems will be affected by heat waves. If you get a heat wave over a crop and they all die, that's a problem. Floods. They can destroy infrastructure. We've seen this in the news. They can spread disease. Crops get affected again. Storms. 80% increase of category 4 or 5 hurricanes, which are the most destructive, expected over the next 80 years as it stands. Water shortages. Glaciers are not growing in the winter. In northern India, where we get all of our rice in the supermarket that's grown in northern India, they won't have any water for that rice if all of these glaciers disappear. Food shortages, wars over resources, ecosystem collapse, temperature affects the synchronicity. If one animal eats one kind of plant and the temperatures change when the plants can grow, animals who depend on them can't eat there, they migrate, they move, whole ecosystems can be affected. Long-lived animals can't adapt. We are probably going to see extinctions of all the long-lived animals that we see. Migrations of animals, plants, humans. It's quite a lot of information there. I should add at this point, when I learnt all this for the first time, I cried. Okay, so let's talk about tipping points. A tipping point is when you have an extreme that you can't reverse, something you mentioned earlier. Now, a big example of a tipping point are the ocean currents. So in the Atlantic here, we've got the Gulf Stream. That means that in the UK, we don't get really cold winters, we don't get really hot summers. Our temperature is kind of stabilized by this Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream works because of density and temperature of the water. Now that can be affected and it cannot be reversed. The ice sheets up in Greenland, if they melt with the hotter water coming in, that affects the salinity of the water, and that affects whether water sinks. And if water can't sink, it can't flow. So if you can't have the flow of water, then you don't bring the warm temperatures. And if you can't bring the warm temperatures, we won't have warm winters, we won't have cooler summers. Our temperatures in the UK will go like that. So the Gulf Stream keeps all of Europe much more habitable than it would be otherwise. So if we lose that, that is a massive deal. Okay. Other things to mention here, the coral reefs. They are critical to all ocean life. If the coral reefs die, there aren't places for sharks or fish to develop, to hide away from the predators. If they die, they've got nowhere to go. Predators can then eat them. Ecosystems are in that area get disrupted. Ecosystems, other parts of the ocean get disrupted. And before you know it, the whole ocean's ecosystems are disrupted because of corals. And as we said before, at 2 degrees, over 99% of the corals will die. Amazon dieback, that's a tipping point. If the Amazon goes over a tipping point, then it actually releases more carbon dioxide than it absorbs. We're at that tipping point at the moment. Permafrost was mentioned earlier as well. That's about methane. Methane is about 80 times as potent as carbon dioxide over 20-year timescales. That's a really big problem because that has a lot more of an effect on global warming than CO2 per molecule. But it's something that we could very easily solve with certain aspects of our production, especially with fossil fuels, if governments decided to. The Greenland ice sheet here. We can see 1996, 1998, and 2007. That's the total melt area. You may think I've cherry-picked these results, but it does give you a trend if you look at the data from 1970s up until now. You can see the amount of ice melting is increasing. We've also got the West Antarctic ice sheet, which has an enormous amount of water in it. If those glaciers melt, then that causes a large amount of sea level rise. And we've seen this again. We've seen financial instability. If you're thinking about doing this degree because you want a better paid job, what happens if the value of money disappears? What happens if the government collapses? You're still going to have your job? What would happen in London if it were totally flooded? All of that property that's worth millions will be worth nothing. How is that going to affect the house prices across the whole of the UK? They won't be able to be insured. We've seen this in Florida. Houses that cannot be insured due to floods because of climate change. Let's talk instead about emissions contributions. Let's see what we can do about this. Let's see what parts we can focus on to try to make that change that we need. So I'd like you to draw a circle on your notes in a blank page somewhere. In that circle, I'd like you to guess a pie chart. So you've got 5 different contributions here. Carbon dioxide from fossil fuels, carbon dioxide from deforestation and destruction of peatlands and so on, methane, nitrous oxide and F gases. F gases like CFCs, HFCs, HFAs, the sort of thing you get in fridges, and Nike Air trainers. We'll stop there because I think we should crack on. Let's see how close you were. So carbon dioxide from fossil fuels is about 65%. Carbon dioxide from forestry and deforestation and so on is much smaller, but still significant at 11%. Methane at 16%. A lot of you had that kind of right ballpark with that one. Nitrous oxide's quite small, but F gases are very, very small. And this is partly what someone was saying about the ozone layer. We've been able to reduce influence from F gases fairly significantly as a result of the ozone layer destruction. Okay, that's good. All right, so some other quick questions then. How much CO2 is emitted globally per second? Now, I'd like your answer in tons. Any guesses? 10 tons a second. 1,000 tons a second. 10,000. Okay, we're talking orders of magnitude here. This is great. Okay. 1,000 wins it. Yeah, it's about 1,337 tons every second. Okay, but since when have we emitted half of the CO2? Since which year? As a human species? Yeah. 1950, we've got a guess there. 1850. 1850 is actually when it started. So I'm talking about at what point we've had half of the emissions. 2000. 1990. Yeah. Good. Okay. What about how much fuel does a Boeing 737 burn every second in litres? Any guesses at all? Yeah. 5. Yeah. You're very close. Yeah. So it's between 2.5 to 3 litres a second. When I flew around the world, I've been to 60 countries. I loved my travel, but now I won't fly again because of the impact that aviation has on global warming and CO2. But more than that, it's also air pollution and it's inequality. So yeah, there's a lot wrong with flying. Now, I think we probably are running out of time, so I'm going to shoot through this. I was going to ask you to draw another pie chart to guess the contributions by sector. So how much comes from electricity and heat production, agriculture, forestry, buildings? This is kind of important for us to know. And it comes in at this. So about a quarter comes from electricity and heat production. Why? Because a lot of countries still rely on coal. Agriculture, other land use, why is that so high? Around 80% of our arable land is to grow food for cattle. Transportation, 14%, like aviation fits into that. But if we factor in water vapor and contrails and so on, then the total contribution from aviation alone can be around 7 to 9%. Although that's not known. Okay. So how much carbon dioxide do we have remaining as a budget if we're trying to keep in 1.5 degrees with a 50% chance of doing that in gigatons? Again, orders of magnitude. Well, let's have a guess. Gigatons is a bit of a difficult unit to work with. 10. Okay. Any other guesses? We've got around 400 gigatons. Now, let's think about what 400 gigatons means. How long will that last at current rates of 1,337 tons every second? You could work this out, but we don't have time.
About 10 years?
About 10 years. Yeah, lovely. What a guess. Yeah, 9.5 years we've got at current rates. Now, a good question you might be asking yourself is, how much did COVID-19 affect this? Surely that's had an impact, right? Not really. Okay, so if we think about the things that we stopped doing, all that flying and driving and whatever that we stopped for a little bit, that was a decline of around 7%. Or actually, it's more like 5%, I think. And are emissions going up or down at the moment? Up. Yeah. Okay. Now, on this slide, these are different trajectories that we could have taken. Along the x-axis is the year. Now, if at 2000 we decided to curb or reduce our emissions, we would have had until 2100 to do that. Because it's about the area under the curve. It's about the total amount of carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere. It doesn't matter about current rates. It matters about what's in the atmosphere at the moment. Remember, this lasts for a long, long time, and it's not going to just disappear. So we haven't done anything to reduce our emissions. They've kept going up and up and up, off the scale. And how long have we got now to deal with this mess? 9.5 years, and it's got to go like that. So we have to reduce 7.6% every year, for the next decade. COVID-like cuts every year for the next decade to reach that target. And current pledge trajectories from governments around the world give us less than 1% chance of warming below 1.5 degrees, and less than 5% chance of warming below 2 degrees. Do you remember the graph I showed you between the 1.5 and 2 degrees? And look at these statistics. Okay. How much more carbon can we emit? This graphic here shows you over time how much carbon we have to send into the atmosphere. You can see about 1960, 1970, we're about 45%. That gets to 2000, over 60%. Look at the rate it's gone up by, and we've got that much budget left, and we've got less than 10 years to get it out, or to stop putting it in the atmosphere. You can see the magnitude of the challenge here. So just to watch the animation again. Crazy, isn't it? Okay, let's quickly mention the ecological crisis, and I'm aware of the time. The natural world contains around 8.7 million species. So how many species currently face extinction? Any guesses? Half a million. Nice guess. Any others? 2 million. We'll take a geometrical mean between them. Yeah. Good guessing. All right. I mean, it's absolutely horrific, but yeah, 1 million species currently face extinction. Remember, when they go extinct, they ain't coming back. What percentage of mammal biomass is actually wild? Mammals like, I don't know, let's think of cows, pigs, sheep, they're all mammals, right? Whales. Let's think of all mammals. How much of that biomass that we have in the world is actually wild as a percentage? 25, 1? 15? Okay. So it's around 4%. 4% of the mammals in the world are wild in terms of biomass. Well, what's the rest of it? Here, agricultural. There you go. Right. So in terms of global land use, you can see that 27% is for farms, 26% for forests. That's crazy. And when we think about the biomass in terms of mammals, this infographic I took a photo of at the Natural History Museum. 60% are cows, pigs, and other livestock. 36% is us. 4% is everything else. When we talk about birds, 71% of all birds by biomass are chickens. Well, what percentage of forests and grasslands that nearly entirely covered all arable land 10,000 years ago, how much of that has been converted or lost to farming and desertification? 60? 46%. Yeah, it's right kind of ballpark. Now, I'm an environmental activist because it matters, doesn't it? But how many people like me were murdered in 2020? Globally, yeah. And 220. Now, almost a third of those murders were reportedly linked to resource exploitation. So logging, mining, large-scale agribusiness, hydroelectric dams, and other infrastructure. This article came out 2 days ago. I don't know about you, but when I see Shell, I don't think they're my friend. And I've seen them at imperial events. They've been endorsed by this university. Okay, let's revisit. How many people in this room, put up your hand please, if you are not worried or scared about what I've just said? People who are worried or scared now. What about the people who can't stop thinking about what I've just said? Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? This is mad. Okay, all right. Now, what can we do now about this? What can we do? Well, in terms of governments, we can support renewables, scrap fossil fuel and wood subsidies. We can support low carbon farming and scrap meat and dairy subsidies. You know, you don't pay any VAT on milk. We can tax fossil fuels a bit more responsibly. Aviation fuel is not taxed. Support public transport. Get people on buses and trains, electrified trains. We've still got diesel trains in this country. Support home insulation and heat pumps. Reforest and rewild. You know, the Royals are the largest landowners in the UK, and they don't rewild their land. We've got to scrap road building projects and airport expansions. They're mad. Okay, we've got to act now. How long have we got left to do this? Yeah. Okay. Now, what can you do as individuals? Well, you can talk to each other. You can talk to groups. You can listen to my podcasts. Tipping points. This is where I interview fellow scientists who have become environmental activists. To learn more about the problems and solutions. Yeah, learn more about it. I mean, it can really affect you, but you need to learn more about it. You need to think about a plant-based diet. Think about what I talked about in terms of agriculture. Don't fly if you can avoid it. I know it's very difficult for people in this room who are international students, but this is not about blame, okay? If you're in this country and you're from another country, you have to fly home, then do it. I'm talking about the people who fly for holidays, people who fly to get a new suit. 25% of the flights carry cargo. If you get a new phone, it's come by plane. If you get flowers from a supermarket, they've come by plane. If you get asparagus from Peru, it's come by plane. You might not fly, but you are if you're buying those things. So remember that. Okay. Switch to a renewable supplier. That's an easy win. Repair things. Don't buy new stuff when it breaks. Okay, learn to fix it. If you get a hole in your trousers, buy a needle. Bank responsibly. If you're HSBC, change today. All right, and finally, protest and vote. Use your vote. Okay, Divest Imperial. That's a group in Imperial about trying to get us out of our fossil fuel ties. And I'm a member of Scientists for Extinction Rebellion. This is all of us here a few years ago. But I mean, that really helped me to understand how to cope with it, how to cope with this craziness. I went through a serious bout of depression because I couldn't cope with this stuff. You know, this is not a joke. This is about my future has been completely turned upside down because of what I've learned about this stuff. I used to drive, I used to fly, I used to eat meat, I used to do loads of things, but I don't anymore. So there's that big shift in your personality and what you think you need to do in the future. Shall I save for a house? Don't know anymore. Shall I have children? I'm not sure if I should. Lots of these things are playing around in your mind, right? So join a group because that can really, really help. Okay, now final slide here. At the Climate Summit, you've got energy independence, preserve rainforests, sustainability, green jobs, livable cities, renewables, clean water and air, healthy children, etc., etc. And someone in the audience is saying, but what if it's all a big hoax and we can create a better world for nothing? So all the things that I've suggested are worth doing anyway, surely. So let's do it. I know we're out of time. But if you do have any further questions, I'll come back in an hour and you can ask me anything you like. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get the microphone?
For who is at home, we'll stop 10 minutes. We do a pause, and then I will open the lecture one on the general channel on Teams. I put as well lecture slides there for whoever wants to follow the lecture on the slides. And see you in 10 minutes time from now.